Hello, YouTube!
That's a new intro. He says as he's screaming into a can of kidney beans. Okay, so hello to you, from me to you. Today I'm gonna be briefly and very improvised talking about a question, a ponder that I get a lot, well, a bit, about how I approach designing sounds, to be more specific. Ooh, it's winter. So yes, and I was kind of thinking about it, how to kind of go about it in a punchy manner, but I don't know, I just thought, I'll just wing it and see what happens. So indeed, I mean, I'm gonna talk about kind of like a client is approaching me right now, and they're like, hey, we have a game, and I'll just go through my process very briefly. It's not the shortest process, but it's a process that I can hopefully explain in roughly 10 minutes or more. Let's see. Okay, so first off, when a client approaches me by email or whatever, Twitter, Facebook, anything, anyway really, or live, the first thing I want to know, of course, what kind of a game it is. What is the game? And how far the game is. What, any lore, any info of the game, any concept art, anything, or even in written form or talked form, just what's happening. What is the game? Is it a sci-fi game? Is it a fantasy game? Is it fantasy game? Or is it, you know, a sports game, a car game? Just to kind of starting to map out what to really think about. And something that I always do, and I ask my clients if possible, if they don't provide this, then I will need to do this. But it's better if the client does it, and then I kind of iterate on top. I always ask for a list, a preliminary sound list, so I can evaluate the work and I can start kind of designing, starting to kind of roll things in my multiple brains, to kind of get a picture of what to do. So first off, I would ask for, like, you know, player actions. What can the player do? So in this quick example, this player can sword slash quickly, sword slash heavy. Now, the first thing, if I see this, I'm thinking, how do these differ from each other? Is the heavy, is it a slower animation? Is there a wind up to that? And if yes, I would just add, okay, sword slash heavy, wind up time. Then I would need to see the animation for that. Is it like attack, or is it just like there's a difference to how I approach to create that sound? Then I would ask for, I would see like, okay, footsteps. You have different materials, so you can walk on top of metal, you can walk on top of a wooden bridge and all that stuff. All that sounds and assets that I need to make, so I need to know what I'm making. Then the player can jump. Okay, what is the player wearing for its movement? As you can see, I have all kinds of stuff here that I would use for movement. So I need to know, is it like, does it have a backpack? It will already sound like dramatically different than it just have clothes, like no backpack. That was a bad example, but you know, different materials. What kind of what is the player character wearing? Is it human even? Is it like a blob of slime? I don't know. All these things affect the sound design. And okay, double jump, I see. What kind? What does it look like? Is there some kind of an animation, like visual effects to it? Is it like fiery jump, or is it like a airy whoosh, or is it, you know, slime or whatever, you know? Then dash, skill X, skill Y, take damage, death, all this stuff. What happens if death? Does the player teleport and reappear somewhere else? Or do they just die? It's always different per game. And then the enemies, they would tell me like, hey, or I would ask them to tell me, or I would write this myself. Okay, what are the enemies? What are their actions? How do they behave? Do they have like attack anticipations? And then the attack, like you see here, oh, it's a flaming laser sci-fi axe. Well, now I know that, so I can think about that. The enemy aggroing the player, like what is the enemy AI like? All this kind of stuff. Oh, there's a fishing minigame. Okay, sure. I need to kind of think of that. Okay, how do you unlock this? Is there something specific you need to do? I kind of start, going through these lists, and I start thinking about things, how to tie them together sonically. Like, that's what I would call design. How to make everything nice and coherent with each other. What are the tying elements here? How to make these systems feel like they are all part of the same game, the same characters, the same actions. I feel like all that stuff is, well, at least to me, that stuff is very important. For example, Cult of the Lamb, a pretty recent game I was in. Something that I used to tie things together, like player-wise, is the player has a little bell. Click, 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 click. Like when they run around, they have a little bell. I can't remember which bell I used, but let's assume it's this. They have a little bell, so all their actions have like a little bell sound, so it already makes the player kind of, the player actions feel like they're unified in some way. It can be small things like that. And I would use the same, like, clothes and materials to, like, place into its actions, so it feels like the same player. Then at other times, like, I would do that in every project. If I decided on clothes and materials for something, I would use the same things for that or that type characters, just so it's all unified. Another example, like Nuclear Throne. You can see Nuclear Throne characters here. Yeah. Yeah. In Nuclear Throne, I wrote a language. And also in Atomic Crops, I wrote like a language that ties everything together. So all the characters are, especially in Nuclear Throne, they are kind of yelling words and stuff in the same made-up language. And it makes it, again, it kind of ties all the characters together, and the world and the setting and the lore. All of this stuff. I'm just kind of finding ways to bridge these things so it all feels like it's in the same world and not like separate worlds. That's actually one of my pet peeves in some designs, in some games. Like, I hate it when sonically things are different. Like, the same character has sonically different sounds and it just doesn't tie together. I don't want to make this video about me complaining about stuff, but that's just something I personally don't like. And I like when things are nice and unified and feel coherent. And that also gives you a lot of room to experiment within such thing. But okay, so now I know the list. I'm choosing materials for the things, enemies, objects, player, and player actions and stuff. And yeah, so yeah, part of my, actually, sorry, I'm jumping around a bit. This video is definitely going to be longer than 10 minutes. But something that I think, like, when I know all this info, that's when I start to kind of write down notes. So, like I talked earlier, materials, I would then just write down, depends, sometimes pen and paper, sometimes like a memo app on my phone, or, just a text edit notepad thingy. And then just start writing down things like, okay, the player, it uses this, I'm not going to write stuff now, but like, I would write down things like, okay, all of its clothes are, this is what they're wearing. These are the clothes I want to, and materials I want to use for that. And it's not just randomly something. Again, I would look at the lore of the game, how the game works, what do they look like, what are they wearing, and why in that world. Just to kind of then choose the right props to it. Just to, you know, again, it's just tiny micro steps to making things kind of more believable into that world. But yeah, so I would start designing things like that. What do the weapons sound like? What do they look like? And all that stuff. And then animations. So now I know, now I kind of written a design document, and now I start looking at, in the same time we'd be looking at animations and stuff, but then we've gone through this, I would show it to the client. They would say like either okay or maybe this, and I would adjust accordingly, or they, like this happens quite often. They come back to me and they're like, oh, no, we have this, it's because of this and this thing. We have these crystals that float in the air to provide energy to all the magic spells or whatever. And I'm like, oh, well, I missed that. Then I would write that down and think, okay, how do these crystals, how do they function? What do they do? And how might that sound like? And then come up with like a design for the crystal energy. And you know, it kind of turns into a lot of mental systems like that. And I start writing them down, like mental guidelines for myself. Then I would experiment, you know, let's say it's a sci-fi game. If these crystals, I would kind of think, okay, what if they're kind of a little mechanic too, or like sci-fi, and I would start, you know, experimenting a bit with sound palettes, creating source sounds. Like that's the thing that I like to do in projects. I start creating source sounds, so I have something that I've been creating with some kind of a unified idea, and I have a library of sounds made with that mental space. So when I start creating sounds, I have something to use that's already in that world, if that makes any sense. I personally don't like to use like random sound libraries. They have a place and I still use them, don't get me wrong. But I don't like to use them as my building blocks as such, like the main building blocks. I always like to create that stuff myself, go outside and record whatever I feel fitting. So it's always custom to the project. I like that. I like experiencing new things, especially in games. Like pretty much all of my games, I create a source library, so to say. And then, but then I use sound libraries for stuff like explosions, which are extremely hazardous and expensive to record. I've budgeted through that stuff back in the day, and it's pretty expensive. So a lot of explosion stuff. Of course, I record like fireworks or create explosions out of noise, processed noise, or just, you know, bang stuff around, overdrive, distortion, all that stuff, wave shaping to create explosions. But quite often it is also, you know, just raw TNT explosions or like cannon shooting stuff that I place on top. And that's usually libraries, because I can't afford to record big explosions myself. And also in Finland, it's not the simplest operation to perform, at least legally. And I'm not gonna go to some black market to buy explosives. That sounds like a very bad idea. But yeah, I'm just mumbling now. And the video is already 14 minutes. Okay, so yes, I started writing down, I started kind of piecing things together, why they work like this. And then kind of going through, I would capture gameplay footage, or if I can get animations from the animators, with like timings and stuff, because that's important. Another important thing, to get timing right. That's one of my pet peeves. Hearing kind of sounds and animations not being synced together. They're not synchronized together in a coherent way. Like, I hate seeing an action without sound, or the sound is being too long or too short for the animation. That's no. So I ask for milliseconds or seconds or however long the animations may be. I would capture it. So if I see, you know, kind of a this is a scary orc, let's say, yes, or demon. I don't know, I just want to draw and make weird noises. So I see this and its mouth open. Let's say this is a boss, like a huge head, and its mouth goes up and down. I want to know the timing of that, so I can create like sounds to work with the timings. Simple as that. Or like guns, if you see a gun shooting and it has like a windy thing. I want that stuff in. It's just little details like that that makes a game alive, in my opinion. Yes, so going through animations, I would capture them, I would reference them. Depending on the game, not all games, some games might have like procedural systems or other kind of random stuff. I then might not put the videos into Pro Tools or whatever DAW I'm using, digital audio workstation. Sometimes I just capture videos and have them as a reference, but I pretty much always, well, I always kind of make reference files into Pro Tools that tell me that the exact length of the animation. And I would place that into Pro Tools, so when I create the sound, I can reference this reference track. So yes. So yes, animations list. So that's pretty much the kind of general design process that I go through. I hope this video is comprehensible in any way and interesting. I don't know, I feel like I'm just mumbling. I'm just winging this right now. But yeah, it's kind of stuff like that I think about. So again, list and knowing what the project is, the lore of the game, and trying to tie those elements. That's something that I think about. Then like animations, animation lengths, what they look like. And also I like to know the why of enemies if possible. If there is no why, I will probably make up something in my own mind that fits the game, and I might ask, you know, the game lore designer, narrative designer, game designer, whoever, or animators, concept artists, whatever, like, what's the kind of why? What's the why of these enemies? And try to kind of incorporate that into the design. And as a stylistic thing, I like to kind of design the style of the sounds of the game. Like, for example, let's take Nuclear Throne again. That's an easy one. In Nuclear Throne, one of the big inspirations was like B or C tier, like 70s movies, in a sense, like action movies and sci-fi movies. Well, at least I remember talking about those with JW, and then I kind of wanted the game to be nice and kind of distorted and kind of uneasy and loud. That was kind of one of the kind of stylistic choice of Nuclear Throne. And of course I put my own twist to it with punch and video game stuff. Or then like Badland, that's another good example. In Badland we had lots of nature and like machines taking over nature. So I wanted the nature to be a big part of the design and physics interactions. And then like when you go from one cycle, like the levels in the game are like day cycles. So different day cycles have different ambience to them. Like the machines are gradually taking over, the birds are not singing as much anymore. Different birds are singing, or animals voicing and all that stuff. And machines gradually start appearing. You know, telling the lore in ways, in kind of various mysterious ways like that. I just love stuff like that. It just brings everything together better. But yeah, yeah. So it's kind of these kind of things. Let me know if you want to hear more, or if you have something more specific you want to know about this stuff. And yeah, this video is 20 minutes long. I hope you got something out of this. Yeah, let me know in the comments, like and subscribe, ring the notification bell. Let's bring a notification bell. Ring it. Oh no, where? Someone, no! My cowbells. Someone has nicked them. Okay, well, this is our notification bell. New video. Yeah, thank you to you. And let's do a little outro with the kitty bean.
Thank you. Like and subscribe. Comment down below if you want to know more. And if you have any questions, let me know. Again, down in the comments. Haha.
Okay, I'm never doing that outro again. Horrible. That was bad design. Catch you later.